So today we are going to speak about something important, an important topic for businesses, especially how to build a positive culture inside the workplace. With a great HR specialist, Tiffany, could you please introduce yourself and what do you do for business?
Sure. My name is Tiffany Castagno, and I'm an HR consultant. So I'm actually CEO of Zephyr, which is cultivating the evolution of professional HR. So I help small to mid-market businesses build their brands and cultures, help them build their infrastructure. So that could be a startup, it could be a nonprofit, an organization that has a lean HR team, or maybe they don't have an HR team, or someone who's functioning in maybe a CFO position and they're kind of balancing the role of HR as well, and maybe not trained in that expertise. So that's a lot of fun. I'm based out of Pittsburgh, but I help clients nationally, and I've been in HR for about 13 years now.
Oh, congratulations on that. So my first question is, how do you evaluate the current status of the HR departments? Globally, where do you see the weaknesses and the strengths?
I think in terms of, I guess we'll end on a positive note. So let's start with the weaknesses. So I think when as an HR professional and an HR practitioner over the years, what I've noticed is that we don't, particularly as HR, have a seat at the table all the time. So from top down, HR has to be included, and organizations have to stop painting HR as the bad person, because we also often get a bad rap, and then engagement suffers and people are afraid to come to HR if they even know who their HR person is. And so we also have to learn more about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, celebrate people bringing their whole selves to work. And that includes diversity of thought. And I don't see that often being done well. Don't get me wrong, there are some amazing organizations out there who are just crushing it. They're doing so great with that. There are some others who maybe haven't found their way to that path, or they're checking the box. And so, what I think we're doing well is we're learning along the way. We're creating these learning organizations, and people are learning how to develop their teams more. Leaders are more and more getting groomed in their leadership capabilities. I see us, kind of moving a little bit more towards succession planning, which hadn't always historically been done well. So those are encouraging things too. So we're ending on a positive note.
And where do you think you can revolutionize this department?
Where?
Yeah,
Or
what areas, what points can you suggest?
I think definitely building stronger leaders. So our leaders a little bit have gotten left behind in the process, where I guess what I'm trying to say by that is they're not always mentored by their next level. So people get moved from a technical role, an individual contributor role, into leadership without not a lot of tools. They're not onboarded correctly. I think that onboarding itself is an opportunity in these organizations. So that's something that I'm noticing needs to be done. I would say, succession planning is another area, though it's come a long way. It's who do you have on your team right now? When are they going to be ready for that next level role? Assuming they're going to be ready. And what does that look like? Map that out and develop people. I think one of the other things that's a great opportunity is that too many times we rely on policies, or we're too black and white. We have to be able to play in the gray, and that's how you really evolve diversity.
So my next question is, you are recommending more voice for the HR specialists. Why would you say that?
Because people are the heart of every organization. No organization exists without people. Even if you look at, so I help founders who may just be starting out, or it may be just them or a couple of other people on the team. And so what's important there is that people have to realize that there, it's not it's not that HR is coming in to try to take over, but people are the hub of your organization. So even if you don't have employees like the founder that I just described, you have to understand that at some point you're going to have people, and those people are going to interact with your customers. There's a whole supply chain. People want representation of individuals who look like them. Someone once in an interview was like, well, I don't see anyone who looks like me, and so this just isn't going to be the place for me. And that was a hard truth, but we have to be able to support our HR teams, because we balance both the organization and the employees, and we have to be whole and we have to be celebrated. And that's needed, because we can help with strategy just as much as the tactical piece.
And why is there such a lack of understanding of the role of the HR team?
I think some of it is because I think a lot of it is because of the history of HR and how we started out as personnel. We started out pushing paper. We started out being the dress code police, the policy police, and sharing with people what they're not supposed to do versus celebrating what they should. Right, wrong, or indifferent. That's just the evolution, but it has come a long way. And I don't think that our organizations have grown up in that mindset. I don't think that the other piece is that HR professionals have not always had time and space and resources and tools to be able to be strategic. So they got caught in that rut, and it still happens today, of just pushing paper, or some organizations don't celebrate that diversity of thought. And so you can't have your own voice. And so people stop saying things, and you have turnover. Then the next person has to pick that up. So there's a whole host of issues that come along with that.
So you are basically recommending or advising that the HR team would speak up, speak to the boss, speak to the manager, express themselves, celebrate their own department. What roles would you exactly be celebrating?
I think for employees too, not just HR, we want to have a voice so that we can help leaders along the way. A lot of times leaders think it's just their own charge and that they have to do it alone, but they don't. And so it's about employees celebrating that. It's about managers really knowing what their team does, but owning what they do and letting them grow and develop and cross collaborate so that they can grow, and not being afraid to lose them when they do need to grow. And so I think that's a lot of it. I think HR is pretty established by itself. It's always evolving. It looks different in every organization. So I'm not necessarily advocating for new roles. I think it's defining what those roles are and empowering your HR people, just like we're employees too. So empowering your HR team as well as employees. That is it's been proven. There are stats out there where it is helpful. Same as diversity.
So my next question is, what kind of environment would you build in the workplace, and how would you achieve that?
I would build an environment, and these are the environments that I celebrate, where people are celebrated, where they can show up authentically to work and not feel like they have to hold back. Of course, always tact and professionalism and collaboration and all those things. I'm not saying like don't address poor behavior or things like that, but allow people to have a voice so they can flourish. If you don't know what's on people's minds, how can you develop them? And if you don't hear them out, they're going to walk out the door. They will, I assure you. And I've worked with those organizations who have had to turn around a lot of turnover. So I would create one where people there are policies and structures. Some people don't want that because they think it holds them back, but you have to have a strategy. It's the guideposts, the roadmap to getting you where you need to go. So I'd create one that's strategy. Everyone's in on the vision. Everyone knows what the vision is, and where teams have an opportunity to build a part of that. That's so important towards
And where,
engagement.
great. And where do human qualities like empathy, humility, and grace fit into that kind of environment?
I think a lot of employees and leaders bring those. Those are key skills that we want from people, and so we want people who are empathetic, who aren't just going to be defensive every time you give feedback, or they're not going to get along with their coworkers, or they don't want to collaborate with people. You want leaders to exercise grace and come from a place of understanding versus telling somebody they screwed something up, and instead of asking curious questions and saying, "I see that this project missed its deadline. Can you help me understand what happened here?" Versus, "You didn't get this done. Why didn't you get it done?" And coming from an accusatory manner. But that empathy goes a long way, and knowing your employees' personal lives and what's going on. Sometimes there are triggers from the external environment. We're living through a lot of that right now. I won't go through the list that keeps growing of 2020, but there are some challenges, and it's understanding that people may not be their full selves right now, but giving them the space for that, checking in on them, and checking in because you care, not because you have an agenda.
What is EQ and how to practice and manage it?
So emotional intelligence and having those qualities, I think, is very, very important. So as a leader, it's very important to be self-aware. As employees, it's very important to be self-aware. And some people mix it up, that if some of these things only are for employees, or only employees have to practice empathy or grace, or they have to be emotionally intelligent, or leaders they think they can just do whatever. Nope, it works both ways, and it should work both ways. So it's really important to know yourself, where your opportunities are, but also to celebrate what your strengths are. So there's a difference between confidence and arrogance, and I think that's part of that balance too, and how we balance it all out. That's kind of how I look at EQ, is what is the balance of everything, and how do we really fully bring our full true selves within balancing things like conflict.
Regarding conflict, how do you think network fit into your perspective?
Net worth.
Networking.
Oh, networking. And conflict. Um, Well, I think conflict's inevitable. We're always going to have it. You can't get around it. In fact, it can be actually healthy. And some people are like, what? But it can, because if you talk things out, if there's a different disagreement, so many times, whether in the workplace or in the family, if there's conflict, where I've said something to someone and they're like, whoa, that is not what I meant. Or, they have said, oh, I thought you meant something else. Now, had we not talked about that, it would have been different. And people shy away from tough conversations sometimes, which is also an opportunity in the workplace. But conflict is healthy. And actually, when you're speaking of networking, so I have a very good friend on LinkedIn, and he and I met over a disagreement. We met because he was saying some things about his perceptions of HR, and I was like, whoa, pump the brakes. That's not how I see it. And I love what I do. I'm passionate. So I was advocating for my career and my HR professionals out there. And he said, okay, I understand that perspective. Thank you for bringing that perspective. So while we may not have agreed on our perspectives on it, we agreed to respect each other's differences, and we support each other fully. And it's beautiful. It really is.
Regarding your human HR experience, how do you think LinkedIn fits in this networking effort?
Oh my gosh, it's huge. It is, I think a lot of us share the commonality that we used to think that it was just for resumes. I always would be like, go on LinkedIn. Between LinkedIn and Indeed, those are the two places where I always have found my jobs. True enough, over the past decade, those are my go-to resources. And I still would tell people that. But LinkedIn is so great. It is this whole community of people. You have access to a full network of people who you can talk to, whether it's to get more expertise in what you're doing, to learn a new skill, to find a mentor. I have a mentee in Italy. There are people on there who have different skill sets that you're wanting to learn. There are people on there who you just like, and you love their energy, and they're doing something totally different, or you can find a coach. There's so many people on there. And so I would tell people, polish up your profile and make sure that it looks good. And I do advocate for people posting, whether it's sharing an article, sharing a thought, sharing your expertise. Not everyone's comfortable with video, but LinkedIn is a magnet for meeting people from all around the world. And that's one blessing I've gotten out of COVID, is I've met people from literally all over the world.
Regarding your word COVID-19, how does uncertainty fit into this effort? And how do you think people should adapt with it?
It's very difficult. And I will say that, having launched a business, my business just turned 6 months old the other day. And so I launched in COVID. I launched in the midst of these uncertain times. And so I'm empathetic to those who've had to pivot, because I never had to do that. I only know this environment, but what it taught me is that, yes, I need to work with organizations to make sure they have a strong bench, that they have good successors in those seats, because people have more time to do some of these projects now. I need to make sure that I'm providing guidance. Every single client of mine, well, with the exception of one, but they have all needed COVID-19 guidance. They're uncertain. They don't know what the laws are going to impact this. They don't know, how to handle it if somebody comes in sick. And there's so many things. They don't have policies for this, right? Because no one's ever seen this before. So it's getting ready. And what the major theme here is that you have to be ready all the time for change, because nothing ever stays the same. And I think organizations are realizing that now. Oh, wait, people can work from home, when before they wanted to keep them in the office unnecessarily. And oh, we really need to be prepared for anything. Okay, do we have a plan for X? Let's get a plan for that. People are really planning in ways that I haven't seen before, and I'm telling you, I love it. It's great.
So my other question is, what are your main recommendations as an HR specialist and as an entrepreneur right now?
I think, you know, I always say kindness. I always say kindness always. I think if we approach things as professionals and we remember that at our core, we're all humans. There is a humanity that comes with that employee who walks through the door. Maybe they're not walking through the door right now, but maybe they're on the screen like we are now, and you're over there in Egypt, and I'm in Pittsburgh, USA. But there's such beauty in being able to connect and to appreciate those differences, to allow those voices to be elevated, to not make assumptions about each other. And I would say that comes from a leadership perspective to peers, or to, well, across to their peers, but also to their teams, their direct reports, but also employee to employee. We have to exercise more kindness and be respectful of each other and our differences, and check those egos at the door, because self-serving agendas do not bode well for the success of a team. And when you're talking about building high performing teams.
Yeah, I really appreciate your kindness and your great ideas, and hope you a great future with your entrepreneurship. Thank you so much, Tiffany, for that.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been wonderful talking.